Shikues të nderuar, mirëmbrëma dhe mirë se vini në Jeta në Kosovë. Njëra prej problemeve më të mëdha që na preokupon sidomos gjatë dimrit e në temperatura të ftohta është puna e rrymës. Qytetarëve të Kosovës i është thënë që problemi me rrymë mundet me u zgjedh nëse ne e ndërtojmë një elektron të re. Mirë po, sa është e mençur që të ndërtojmë një termoelektron të re prej qymyrit, që është ndodhësi më i madh i shtresës së ozonit në botë? A duhet edhe neve në Kosovë me na brengos ndryshimet klimatike, që mes tjerash po shkaktohen edhe për shkak të djegjes së qymyrit? Këto janë pyetje shumë të mëdha, për me mujt me ju përgjigj duke e marrë vetëm perspektivën kosovare. Andaj, për të kuptuar më shumë rreth kësaj çështje, në muajt e fundit i kam bërë 2 udhëtime, një në Amerikë e një në Afrikë. Në Amerikë kam udhëtuar për një konferencë të Bankës Botërore me shoqëri civile. Banka Botërore është me rëndësi në këtë rrëfim, sepse thuhet që shtetet në zhvillim, siç janë Kosova, nuk munden me ndërtu elektron të re pa marrë kredi nga Banka Botërore. Por para 2 vjetëve, ky institucion kishte pasur problem të madh kur e kishte aprovuar një kredi për të ndërtuar një elektron të qymyrit në Afrikën e Jugut. Termoelektron të njohur me emrin elektrona e Eskomit. Nga presioni i grupeve ambientaliste, administrata e Obamës kishte vendos me abstenu në dhënien e votës për ndërtimin e elektronës së qymyrit në Afrikë. Përkundër abstenimit të Shteteve të Bashkuara të Amerikës për ta aprovuar këtë kredi, Banka Botërore megjithatë e kishte aprovuar projektin e ndërtimit të elektronës në Afrikën e Jugut, duke shkaktuar kështu kompromitimin e vetvetes. Kështu thonë kritikët, të cilët e potencojnë që është hipokrizi që Banka Botërore me një anë insiston me i menaxhu fondet e ndryshimeve klimatike që do t'i dedikojnë shtetet e zhvilluara, e në anën tjetër po jep kredi për projekte që e rrisin ndotje në botë. Pas kësaj afere me termoelektronën në Afrikë, më interesonte se me çfarë argumentesh Banka Botërore po don me shty projektin e ndërtimit të Kosovës së re, që mund të shndrohet në një Eskom evropian. Në këtë konferencë që u mbajt në Washington në shtator, i ashtrova këtë pyetje Robert Zeliktit, shefit të Bankës Botërore.
My name is Jeta. I'm the Kosovo director of Balkan Investigative Reporting Network. And I have a question for you, Mr. Zelik, who made a very sincere confession in your statement just now when you said that some developing countries actually have to have energy produced from fossil fuel. Now, the civil society from South Africa here has told us, the Kosovar civil society, that the example, that's why Eskom was built, under that excuse, that it will bring electricity to the poor. What actually happened is that the electricity became too expensive to go to the poor because of the new coal power plant. Why are you still determined to build a new coal power plant in Kosovo, the European Eskom maybe? Are you ready to bear the cross of a European Eskom in Kosovo without actually doing 2 very important things? A study of alternative energy resources and a study of the loss of so much energy anyway at the moment in Kosovo, the energy accountability, without analyzing energy accountability and efficiency. Can you tell us why you still want to go ahead with the coal project without doing these 2 studies?
Thank you. The gentleman there.
Ndërsa përgjigjja e Zeliktit ishte si vijon.
Now, on Kosovo, here's the situation that Kosovo has brought to us. And we haven't had a final decision. In fact, it has to go through an expert panel that we created exactly for projects like this to ask exactly the questions you've asked about alternatives. But the proposal is to shut down a 40-year-old power plant that is the single worst power source in southeastern Europe. In its place, it would clean up another aging power plant and build a more efficient one. Now, like you, we've asked a lot of questions about what alternative energy sources there could be, because that would be our preference under most environments. And even if it's going to be fossil fuel, whether we could use natural gas or other types of methods. So one of the things we developed, particularly for coal, is to create an independent panel of experts to review the proposal and to come back and ask how does it conform with some screening criteria. And the screening criteria raise exactly the types of things that you've mentioned. So you'll be able to see that. That will run its process. And again, the very sensitive issue here and is the one that you mentioned, but I'll take this back on the South African context. One thing to be a little careful about in ESCOM is, you know, when you talk about the effect on the poor, I don't know, how do you affect the fact that if South Africa doesn't have electricity, that people won't have jobs? How do you affect, you know, its effect on various industries that are dependent on that electricity? Now, in the case of ESCOM, you know, we actually worked with South Africa to develop energy efficiency programs, a special electricity funding program for the poor. And I may be out of date, but we can check about, I believe it actually provided low or no-cost energy to the poor up to a certain level. And OB here can correct me on that. And then, of course, we also looked at alternative energy development, which South Africa is doing. So, look, I don't mean to suggest these are slam dunks in any way, but one of the things that some countries want the bank involved is, you know, ESCOM had its own issues, not only in terms of efficiency, you know, procurement and other types of aspects. And frankly, the hard choice that we face, so you understand, is that do we get involved or do we say no and then sort of have the situation proceed without us? And sometimes we do that. But if we feel we can run through a process, do this analysis, bring in an expert independent panel, make it transparent, make sure they develop alternatives, make sure they give low energy to poor people, well, then maybe that's something we should do. And again, I realize this is an open discussion topic, but South Africa is a democracy. Now, you know, you may disagree. And if you disagree, you participate in that democracy.
Që prej momenti që e ka marrë këtë përgjigje, më ka interesu me ditë se a është e vërtet që termocentrali i ri në Afrikën e Jugut i ka sjell rrymë të varfërve, ashtu siç po thot shefi i Bankës Botërore, sepse është argumenti i njëjtë që po përdoret për me ndërtu edhe Kosovën e re. Kështu që në dhjetor udhtova për Afrikë të Jugut, ku edhe mbahej konferenca vjetore e Kombeve të Bashkuara për ndryshime klimatike. Nëse është një vend që do të duhej ta ndijej efektin e termocentralit të ri 4100 MW të Bankës Botërore, do të ishte ky, qendra e qytetit më industrial në Afrikën e Jugut, Johannesburgu. Në Johannesburg u takova me Shireza Sibanelën, qytetare që banon në katin e 8 të një ndërtese mu në qendër të qytetit. Ajo punon në një organizat jo qeveritare dhe të ardhurat e saj janë mesatare për një familje të Afrikës së Jugut. Përkundër faktit që ajo nuk i takon shtresës më të varfër në Afrikën e Jugut, ajo menzi po arrin të paguaj fakturën e rrymës elektrike, që kurse shteti ka filluar t'ja fakturoj konsumatorëve çmimin e ndërtimit të termoelektronës së re.
Yeah, when the World Bank loan was signed, it was said it will assist the poor, the electricity will, and everyone will have access to electricity, and the electricity will be cheaper to the people. But we are not certain about that because we have not seen it. The price went up last year, 35% in July last year, 2010. You were used to buy electricity for 100 rand, but it could last at least maybe 3 weeks. But recently the electricity is shockingly because you cannot buy electricity for 100 rand. For instance, I bought this one for 100 rand. I think by Friday I won't be having electricity. I've got to buy electricity again for another 100 rand. And if you buy electricity for 100 rand, you don't get 100 units at state. You get 87 units because there is tax money that is being divided. That is why it doesn't last. So if you want it to last, it's for you to save energy by not using the stove or use one plate of the stove. And particularly me, I'm staying with my son here. We sometimes don't cook. It also saves us electricity. And we sometimes use a gas stove, which I've borrowed one of my friends because they've cut their electricity as well. It doesn't have anything to use to cook. So that's basically how we survive. We've got to unplug everything and leave the fridge. As you see, you can use the microwave even if you have it. We minimize if you want a cup of tea. Yes, we use it, you know, we had two, we used 2 cups of tea. You don't have to fill the kettle so that the electricity doesn't move. But what we do, you've got to switch off the geyser, as you see, and the stove. If the stove, you've got to switch it both here. Because even if it's off here, if here it's not off, then the electricity is running. So you've got to keep everything off. And you do washing, you can't use a washing machine, you can't dry, you can't do whatsoever. So some people opt to use, for myself, I also opt to take my washing to the laundry, which is easier, even though I've got a washing machine which I can use. Because the washing machine takes a lot of energy, and you can't use the iron at the end of the day. You just have to wash and pack your clothes to save energy. And then at the end of the day, we only use this light here. We use candles. As you can see, there's ashtrays there. We light candles to use them so that we can try to save electricity. And for people like us who are not earning so much, it becomes so difficult. And it's not us only. We feel the pinch as women, and everybody is feeling that pinch, because now as a woman who needs to cook, who needs to do washing and all this, and you cannot use that, it's particularly pretty bad.
What percentage would you say your price has gone up for the last 2 years? Has it gone up 50%?
It's 35%. It went up with 35%.
You are a civil activist too, and you work with NGOs that work with energy. Have you figured out why is your electricity bill risen in the last 2 years?
Yeah, particularly what we've been told is that is because of the loan that was taken from the World Bank, they're paying back and all this. So we've got a problem, and it also differs because, we are supplied electricity by City Power, and so where do people use ESCOM? City Power is like buying electricity from ESCOM, and the owners like Metermate who are running this, they're buying electricity from City Power and selling it to us. So that is why our electricity is so expensive. So we don't know what percentage ESCOM is getting from Metermate, and City Power is getting from Metermate, and how much ESCOM is getting from City Power, because it's a chain, it's a line-up.
So the World Bank loan, has it helped poor people?
It didn't. It didn't help anyone. Even the rich, they feel the pinch of electricity. They're feeling it. It's not a question that it's only the poor that are feeling it. People living in Sentin, people living in Bryanston, wherever, they are feeling the pinch right now, because as much as they're taking to the streets themselves to say, enough, it's enough, this is expensive. So what will it do to the poor person who's not even earning, while there are people who are sitting there who are rich, who are also feeling the pinch of the high rate of electricity.
Has there been protests regarding prices of electricity?
That's correct. The rich had to take to the streets with placards challenging the city of Johannesburg to say, this we cannot afford. If the rich are also protesting, what about the poor person from the ground who don't even earn a living?
We are now in the center of Johannesburg, and an entire building doesn't have electricity.
Yeah, this is central, we call it Central District, Business District, CBD, in the center of Johannesburg.
So
where there's all the shops, markets, shopping malls and whatsoever. And that building, the pink one, doesn't have electricity at all. The electricity was disconnected, I think, in 2009.
Me si panelën u takua edhe Nezir Sinani, aktivisti shoqërisë civile në Kosovë, i cili mirret me energji. Se çka ishte interesimi I tij në këtë shtet, e shpjegoi ai në intervistën e vjem.
Nezir, çka t'sjell këtu në Afrikë të Jugut me I vizitu termoelektranat e Afrikës Jugut? Çka je të mësu prej këtuit?
Jam të mësu shumë, mas shumë të jam të mësu në lidhje me një projekt që ka financu Banka Botërore për ndërtimin e termocentralit 3 në Lepallalet, termocentralit Medupit, I cili është një termocentral shumë I madhe dhe është bo përmes procedurat njëjta përmes cila Banka Botërore është angazhu në Kosovë për me u përfshim projektin e termocentralit Kosove.
A je dosh me deri këtu për me marrë vesh ata?
Po, definitivisht po, me qenë se kemi taku Bankën Botërore dhe ata të nkohen jenë të u livdu që kanë bu këtu është një punë shumë e mirë, e në anën tjetër kemi pas shumë takime edhe me aktivistë Afrikës Jugës që kanë thonë që puna është bo shumë keqe dhe komuniteti s'ka përfitu kur gjë, kështu që kemi pa të arsyeshme që me ardhë dhe me pa me sytë tonë se çfarë punë është bo për bankës botërore, cilat janë përfitimet ose tjekat e komunitetit edhe kemi mësu shumë.
Cili është interesi jot personalin krejt këta? Pse po ta mintu për këtë punë?
Personalisht, interesi jam është që me ngrit vetdijen e çdo qytetari në Kosovë se çfarë nënkupton me ndërtu një termocentral 3 në Kosovë, në kohën kur krejt Evropa dhe krejt vendet e zhvillume janë të orientu në energjit pastër e jo në energjit ndotën. Andej janë orientu me qenë se kjo energji është me pastër, e mbron shëndetin e njeriut, edhe njëtën kohë po bëhet gjithnjë edhe më e lirë. Kështu që për Kosovën, nëse ndërtojmë që tash një termocentral 3 i cili ka me na him punë tek mas 5-6 vjetëve, atëherë ka shumë pikë pyetje sa është zgjidhja më e mirë, edhe në bazë këtyre çka po mësojmë.
A jeti i njëjti person i cili para disa vjetëve ke qenë zëdhënës i kompanisë që ndot ajrin e Kosovës më shumë ti, Kekut. Qysh tash për një herë doli në anën tjetër?
Nuk është për një herë, u ka një fazë mesme brenda së cilës kam qenë i angazhuar edhe në punë tjera, mirë po ajo krejt që ka mësuar kek në fakt më ka shtyr edhe më shumë që më marr me aktivizëm, me qenë se kom pa që ka shumë hapësirë për më përmirësuar këtë drejtim, edhe për me sjell ide të reja në Kosovë për me zhvillu sektorin energjetik, se të në kohën gjithçka u konë shumë e mbyllën edhe këtë fokusi për me zhvillu këtë sektor u konë në qymër.
Çka janë rezultatet konkrete për qëndrimit tënd edhe lobimit që ke bo në Amerikë? Konkretisht çka ke arrit?
Rezultatet konkrete janë që banka botërore me ngrit vetdijen e tyre brenda institucionit tyre në lidhje me këtë projekt, mu marr seriozisht me studimet që asnjëherë nuk i kanë bërë që 6 vjet në Kosovë, kështu që tash e kanë marrë pak më seriozisht që me bë plot studimet që kanë bërë në projektin termocentralit Kosova e Re para se me marrë këtë vendim. Këto janë ato aspektet shumë të prekshme të projektit.
Cila studime?
Studimet mbi energjinë alternative, studimet se cili opcion është opcioni më i lirë për Kosovën për me zhvillu sektorin energjetik, si dhe disa segmente tjera cilat kanë bojnë ma shumë me debatin me shoqërinë civile që kur nuk kanë ndodhur më parë, kurse tash veç po ndodhin edhe pishon që çdo ditë banka botërore është më e involvuar në këtë aspekt.
Çka i thu zonave kritik në Kosovë që po thonë që me siguri ti dhe grupi jot keni ndaj interes tjetër?
Aty në zona ju them që le të lexojnë se çka po prodhohet, domthonë çka po del nga ky projekt, le të lexojnë studimet edhe ato dhona që shumë ekspert ndryshëm që i kemi involvuar në projekt janë të publiku çdo ditë. Le t'i marrim pak pa emocione ato, domthonë se çka flitet për to, me se gjithçka që thuhet në këto raporte është diçka që thuhet nga ona e ekspertëve, nuk është diçka që thuhet nga Neziri apo kushdo tjetër që është i përfshirë në Kosovë drejt për drejt në këtë projekt, mirë po janë segmente shumë të rëndësishme që kanë bojnë me këtë projekt dhe të cilat nuk kanë asnjë gjë të bojnë domthonë me diçka personale me asnjë prej individëve që janë përfshirë në Kosovë me këtë projekt. Gjithçka është profesionale, kështu që nuk po mbrengos fakti domthonë nëse flasin ata dhe thonë që e kanë marrë personalisht dhe kanë përfitime për këtë sen, me qenë se gjithçka që na po prodhojmë e kanë mbuljen e disa prej institucioneve më të forta arsimore në botë, kështu që nuk po mërzit na fort.
Cili është qëllimi i aktivitetit tanë? Çka po don me arrit? Në fund, çka është qëllimi i këtij aktivizmi që e do bësh?
Shpresoj shumë që në fund krejt kësaj pune që po bëjmë na, publiku kosovar me qenë ai që ka me përfitu, e ky publik mundet të përfitu nëse Kosova veç adopton politika më të mira energjetike për me zhvillu projekte më të qëndrueshme energjetike, që kanë më mbrojtë shëndetin e tyre pikë pari, po edhe në fund ditës kanë më mundësu atyre me pas një qasje në energji domthonë më të lirë edhe më stabile.
Tash jemi rrugës për Lefallale, qytetin verior të Afrikës së Jugut, ku është ndërtu termoelektrana e tretë më e madhe në botë e qymyrit me 4800 MW. Quhet termoelektrana Medupi. Po shkojmë e këshyr qysh është përvoja e këtij komuniteti këtu në Afrikë të Jugut, sepse edhe kjo termoelektran është ndërtuar me kredi të Bankës Botërore. Termoelektrana e re në Afrikën e Jugut është duke u ndërtuar në qytetin Marapong, ku veç ekziston një termoelektran e vjetër, qashtu diqysh si në Obileq. Aty e takova Martha Molopon, aktiviste e organizatës Earth Life, e cila merrte pjesë në një debat publik që mbahej në bashkësinë lokale të qytetit Marapong. Këtu diskutoi për atë se cilat janë hapat e ardhshëm që do t'i ndërmerr qyteza lidhur me problemet që i kanë me elektronën e skomit.
That is the Eskom power station. People are experiencing an air pollution. of which they believe is being caused by the ESCOM, and most of the people are experiencing some disease like TB, asthma, and others, and sinus also. Yeah. For the World Bank, I'll be saying to them that they have to stop the plant and make a survey around the community to seek and see how these people need, what they need, what they can do for the communities, what these people really need, and mostly to train the younger people and improve our communities, because that's what most people need.
Has the World Bank consulted the community before it gave the loan? Do you remember, you are one of the few people that read and write in your community.
Yeah.
Do you remember being consulted, or the village representative being consulted before the power plant was built?
No, they were only consulted after, while the plant is being busy built.
And afterwards, who consulted you? The inspection panel or the people who gave the loan?
It was, I think it was inspection panel. T-shirt is not just a T-shirt, it talks.
It talks?
Yeah.
What does it say?
It's about the Earth Life Africa, Africa Earth Life, you see? And then this one is about sustainable energy and climate change partnership. And if you turn around, it's never trust the COP Operation 17. And never trust the COP. COP, not this one, it's not the police, is this one.
What does climate change mean to you here in this community?
Climate change in this community is very rare. I don't know how can I put it, because we're experiencing a lot of challenges about climate changes. We're talking about the power plants, we're talking about our homes. As you can see, there's no much trees. There's no...
But what do you think when the new power plant, Medupi, starts working?
Yeah.
What will life here be like?
If I was a psychologist, I would tell, but for now, we'll be experiencing more problems than we have now. Because those people, once they leave, they'll have to employ permanent people who are going to work at the BDP sites. Then we are really concerned who those people are going to be. Because if it were about to be our local people, BDP side will be all busy training our people. But we don't see those people. Those people who are being trained for now are those people from outside, not the local people. Right?
Has ESCOM improved the quality of life? Has it built schools? Has it trained people to work? Has it employed lots of people?
The ESCOM always say that it has improved and it has employed and it has trained our people. But we as the people who need those needs, those services, we don't see those. But we don't see those, yeah.
And is ESCOM saying it's doing this?
Yeah, ESCOM is saying it's doing those things.
Like which things?
Like building churches, improving schools, improving the community, and giving services and the stuff. But people are, on the other side, people are busy complaining, demanding things from ESCOM. For example, the biggest one is about jobs. ESCOM always tells people is that they don't have skills. If they don't have, the local people don't have skills, why don't they take them and train them instead?
You yourself, you work for ESCOM. How long is your contract?
My contract it was 4 weeks.
4 weeks?
Yeah, it was 4 weeks. For now, this week is my last week.
Zhvillo biznesin tënd, shfrytëzo ofertën më të mirë në treg. Kredi për bizneset të vogla dhe bujqësi deri në 100.000 euro. 0% shpenzime administrative. Procedurë thjesht aplikimi, me aprovim brenda 24 orëve. Banka Raiffeisen. Jeto më mirë.
Kjo që po shihni prapa meje është termoelektrana Matimba në veri të Afrikës jugut, që ekziston tash e Sovjet, pra diçka si Kosova B, ndërsa mu pranë kësaj është ndërtu me dupi. Është ndërtu termoelektrana me dupit me 4800 MW. Kjo që po shihni janë thjesht skeletet e një termoelektrane të re që është ndërtuar me kredin e Bankës Botërore. Ky ndërtim ka filluar që 1 vjet e gjysmë dhe me fillimin e ndërtimit, popullata lokale është anku që kjo termoelektran do t'ja marrë ujin dhe do t'a ndot ambientin shumë. Kjo ankesë i ka shku panelit inspektues të Bankës Botërore, të cilës pas 1 vjet e gjysmë hetimi kanë ardhur në konkludim që kredia që i ka dhënë Banka Botërore me u ndërtu kjo termoelektran në fakt është i ka anashkalu të gjitha standardet e Bankës Botërore kryesore, që kanë të bëjnë me shfrytëzimin e ujit për njerëz të thjeshtë, që kanë të bëjnë me ndotjen e ambientit. Pra thjesht, kjo termoelektran ka me marrë krejt ujin që momentalisht shfrytëzohet për të korrat e njerëzve të thjeshtë këtu dhe ka me ndot ambientin. Pikërisht është kjo çka po brengosim që do t'i ndodh edhe Kosovës pas disa vjetëve. Ajo që ka më la përshtypje në krahinën e Lepallales në Afrikën e Jugut është fakti që nuk jam vetëm fukarat ata që kanë probleme me termoelektranën e re, por edhe pasanikat më të mëdhenj që kanë toka të shumta të cilëve u nevojitet ujë për me i ujit arat. Suzana është gruaja e një fermeri në Afrikën e Jugut, e cila bashkë me djalin e saj Peter kujdeset për fermën e tyre. Termoelektrana e Skomit është duke ja marrë zallin i cili është i domosdoshëm për ta ruajt shtratin e lumit për të cilët varen shtazët dhe të korrurat në fermën e tyre. What does sand mean to people who live here?
In the first place, the sand is our water reservoir. In the second place, it's our water filter. In the third place, it gives us surety of water during high season and low season, especially low season and when we have severe droughts.
How is that affected directly by Medupi power plant, though?
Well, they are taking the sand. They need the sand to build the station, so...
Where are we exactly?
We are now on a farm Ehrenbradstein. One of the extraction points here, I'd like to show you the severe erosion because of illegal mining downstream and as well as upstream. We've got different problems because the result of erosion is different. In this case, you can see the severe erosion, and all our sand is taken away to the empty mine holes down the river, and then it's taken out again and sold to Medupi. Because of the erosion, our water pipes are, as you can see, they are not functioning anymore.
How was this before the Medupi power plant started to get built? Where were those pipes before?
It were about 2 to 3 meters, 4 meters beneath the level of the sand.
Tell me, how has the World Bank affected your individual rights? How has the World Bank directly affected?
The World Bank allowed Medupi and Eskom and other big role players to buy illegal sand, and because of the illegal sand that they buy, erosion took place, and we lost our surety of water. We are not sure whether we will be having water next week or next month, and we're staying here for 35 years already. We've never been without water, although there was about 4 years drought. We still have water because the sand is the reservoir for the water.
The company that is illegally mining this river wrote you a letter a few weeks ago. What did that letter say?
That letter said we are coming in to your property at Ehrenbradstein 1 and the opposite side at Touwfontein remain, and they said they are going to start mining. We had to go to our attorneys to try and stop the mining taking place. We had lots of expenses just to keep him off our property and our neighbor on the opposite side.
Why doesn't the government allow him to mine illegally? Do they think it's illegal?
Environmental Affairs admitted, and the environmental practitioner admitted on the 2nd of September that all the sand taken out and used at Medupi is illegal. They say that when you confront them with it, they just say it is in the interest of the country, in national interest.
How can it be in the national interest of your country to destroy your own rivers?
I'd like an answer on that. From government, but also from the World Bank. The World Bank gives the money for this. And the World Bank says they're not trampling on individuals' rights. They're not giving money to governments that ignore individual rights. But this is what they're doing, and we pay the price. We pay the price in the environment, in our water surety, our money, and we can go on. Our farming, we're farming with game. We have a lot of foreigners, tourism coming in, and this is what's going on now. So it's not nice for the eye to see what's going on here. On the other side we have Medupi. If they didn't get the loan from the World Bank, they would have stopped, because then they wouldn't have had the money for the Medupi power station.
What is the future of your water supply looking like?
It's looking very bad. You can see it for yourself. When we pump about 3 hours a day, and then we can't pump anymore. And at this one, we can pump a little longer. But I'll show you one upstream that we can only pump. It depends on when they open the dam, the water from the dam. We can irrigate, or we can extract water. We don't even irrigate anymore. For an hour or 2 hours, they have to stop the pumps and do it again. And when Medupi is going to start running, I don't know where they're going to be. I really don't know, because the town as it is now, we are in a surgery, and we have water coolers. Our water coolers don't work anymore because they need water to function. So we have to put in little pumps and reservoirs to get them to function again.
World Bank's inspection panel came out with a report citing precisely the arguments you did. What are you going to do now that the report is out?
We will try and do what we can, because this is our living force. What are we going to do with a farm without water? The water underground is not suitable for human, animal, or plant consumption. This is our water, and the World Bank didn't look into that. They granted the loan without seeing to it that there was plans properly in place to see that it's not going to be illegal, and the whole ecology is going to change.
The World Bank is telling Kosovars that since it's an international organization like World Bank getting involved, there will be so much more transparency and regularity in the project. What is your experience?
There is very, very little transparency. I can tell you, with this guy coming to mine on our property, we're trying for 2 years to get from the government as well as from the miner the proper paperwork. We got it. Our lawyer had to command them to give it to us when they wanted to invade our property on the 28th of October. We had a meeting with the World Bank, the panel here, and we told them all these things. We showed them all the stuff. We're going to show them the river. One of their guys said, "Wow, this miner belongs behind bars." You know, and that's what they said more than a year ago, but they didn't stop it. We're waiting for this report for how long now? More than a year. So we don't have that. They did address the sand mining, illegal sand mining, in the report, but we'd like to see what they're going to do about it.
Mirë po, Ministresha Ambientit e Afrikës së Jugut mendon që termoelektrana e re është e domosdoshme për Afrikën e Jugut.
Our commitment is unquestionable. We have a long-term mitigation scenario plan which indicates that by 2020 we would have reduced our emissions by 32% and by 2025 by 42%. So it means that our commitment really must also speak to our needs as we speak at present. That Medupi and Kusile plants, as we speak, has been fitted with the technology that can capture and store carbon. So the carbon capture and storage is the initiative that we're looking into. But tell me, which country in the world will switch off its entire plants, would not use the materials they have to make sure that their people have got electricity, their people have got energy. And we've got the technology for CTL. So it is important that we look at technologies that can improve our ability to continue using coal. What are we supposed to do with this coal that we are told is more than 32 billion tons? It means we've got enough coal for the next 100 years. But we are saying the world must understand that we also are developing. We have an ample opportunity to be able to make sure that we bring in renewable energy. That is why we have just advertised a bid for 3,725 megawatts, and that is an indication of our commitment. We are bringing wind, we are bringing solar, we are bringing biogas, we are bringing this morning I was at the landfill site where we are producing energy from waste. That is an indication of our commitment. But for us to get there, we need to use that which we have in an environmentally friendly way, and that is what we are appealing for the world to understand from us. And for everybody, including South Africans, we're doing this in the best interest of South Africa. Because if anything, if we switch off these power plants, what is going to happen to our economy? What is going to happen to our children? What is going to happen? Poverty is going to accelerate even faster. We want to reduce the trend of poverty, and we're saying we want to create jobs, and we're looking at the economy. And as we speak, that coal-fired power plants are powering our economy. Our economy is energy intense. Unfortunately, even the renewable energy that we bring into the grid, it is going to be subsidized by the taxpayers of South Africa, and it is still going to cost the end consumer a lot of money. So it doesn't mean that because it's renewable energy, it is going to come for free. This technology is still very expensive, but we are still saying we are bringing it on despite its cost factor. But we are saying with time, we will really gravitate towards the clean coal technology that we're talking about, and we are committed to make sure that we become environmentally friendly. It is not questioning climate change. We are not questioning it. We are saying the challenges is there, we need to mitigate, but we also have to adapt.
Ministresha po thotë që duhet me u adaptu. Atyre që ju duhet me adaptu në këto rrethona të reja janë njerëzit si Elana Gregling, që jeton pa kilometra larg termoelektranës së re të Skomit, e cila është në ndërtim e sipër.
My name is Elana Greiling. I've been living in the bushveld since 1994. We came here looking for a little piece of paradise, which we found in the Stemokpan area. My husband is a farmer. We farm with cattle and game. We also have a tourism and hunting outfit on the farm, and I raise my children here. So I am a part of the community, and then I'm a freelance journalist.
The World Bank is telling the Kosovars that when the World Bank gets involved, the process is going to be transparent, and they're going to oversee, and we shouldn't be worried about things we might be worried about if only our government was involved. Now, what is your experience with the World Bank loan?
The moment the loan was given, we have had a whole explosion of problems to the area. Whether the World Bank and its processes are so transparent, I won't be able to say, because the only time we saw the World Bank is when we got the inspection panel to come here. So that's actually the only contact we've had with the World Bank is with the inspection panel, which was really not a bad experience, but I mean that is like after the fact that we already have a lot of problems.
But the inspection panel, what has the inspection panel confirmed?
I think the report of the inspection panel confirms our our concerns about the water, the air quality, pollution, social and economic impacts on the area and the immediate impact during construction. They've confirmed that. We are satisfied with the report from the inspection panel, but the big question is what will happen. It's not what they found. It's something that we know was here all along. We know the problems. The question is, what will they do? It's the answer on the so what question. So the inspection panel, as I understand it, will make the recommendation, but the World Bank's board will still decide what to do, whether they want to stop illegal sand mining along the river, whether they want to force Eskom to get water from another source, whether they want to force Eskom to put in the second stage of air quality control measures. And we won't know if they'll do that. Will they do anything? That is the question.
How has the new power plant affected the community where you live? There is no electricity, while you have the third largest power plant in the world being built next to your house. How could that be?
It's not like they have a little power outlet where we could just plug in our town. The power is taken with huge power lines all the way to the industrial center of the country, to Gauteng. And our municipality has to have the infrastructure to provide electricity to new developments, which needs money and to buy the necessary equipment. And that just doesn't happen. It's not like plugging in a plug.
So the distribution lines of electricity in your little town have not improved, and you cannot get electricity from this plant?
No. Electricity is taken by a huge amount of power lines. In the end, our countryside will look like a spider's web with all these huge power lines crossing what used to be pristine bushveld. So we've got a huge visual impact. And seeing as the main industry in this area used to be agriculture and tourism. We've got ecotourism and hunting in the area, because this is what we sold our area to the rest of the world as the heart of the bushveld. We've got the biggest number of game farms in our municipal area, in our district. And those are all impacted by a huge visual impact of these huge 760 kV power lines running across the countryside.
Coming here, we saw huge road building and reconstructing. Well, isn't that sign of development, or is that something else?
No, unfortunately, I think it's the cause of development, not the sign of development, because we have this huge influx, and our national railway system isn't up to standards, up all the way to the heart of the bush. Everything used here is transported by huge trucks. So the huge instruments, pipes, whatever they need for Medupi is brought here by truck and on that road. So our roads have actually been driven to smithereens by the huge trucks coming in.
How has the plant affected air quality?
It's very difficult to say, because the view differs from local people and the companies. They tell us there's no problem, because they measure air in the direction that the wind blows, but we know that the wind never blows in only one direction. And we find a lot of rust and corrosion in things like fences. We've got game fences, and in our houses, it's as if you live along the seaside. A lot of corrosion we have, as well as unconfirmed number of children and people having problems with asthma and other airway diseases.
Has the new power plant improved the jobs of people, employment? Has it basically brought employment to the people?
I'm sure that there are people getting jobs there, but I don't know many of them. You see, the problem is building a power station is quite a specialized job, as you can imagine. So the local people are qualified to dig the ditches and put up the fences and sweep the floors and do the cleaning. But apart from that, there's a lot of contract workers being brought in. We, for instance, have Oriental workers coming in to do specialized welding. We have people from right around the world doing specialized jobs, which we will never be able to be qualified for. They also use contract workers on a very short term, so it's you get a job for 3 months. And the problem is a lot of people came here in the hope to find work, which led to informal settlements, people sleeping under refuge bags, under bushes, people sleeping in little tin huts in the hope of getting jobs, even people leaving their jobs on farms. And we now have a huge social problem and crime, illnesses and things like that.
How has the local community organized themselves to address these problems to the government, and what have you found in your struggle since the power plant started to be built?
We're not nearly as organized as the people from Kosovo, I must say that. I think we felt that we were fighting a giant company because Eskom, the power generating company, is a parastatal organization backed by the government. Power supply to our country had been identified as a great priority in South Africa. So everybody says that this is a national interest, and that seems to be the magic words. It's a national interest. Everything else was sort of left. Everything else can be ignored. Everything else can be put on hold because this project is in the national interest. So we've actually felt very isolated and very alone. We've had help from our friends at Groundwork and Earthlife, helping us to put in requests to the World Bank and to get the inspection panel here. So we haven't had a lot of success.
Kur kanë fillu me ndërtu termoelektronën e re bashk, edhe qeveria dhe banka botërore i kanë thënë qytetarëve tjerë të Afrikës së Jugut që kjo termoelektron do të sjellë rrymë të varfërve dhe qytetarëve tjerë të Afrikës. Mirë po, këta largpërques prapa me tregojnë se nuk kanë faj qytetarët e tjerë që ankojnë që rryma nuk po shkon te ata. Në fakt, disa prej tyre janë edhe duke u ndërpre edhe çkyq nga rryma, sepse s'po mund më ta paguajnë për shkak çmimit të saj të lartë. Në fakt, rrymë të lirë po paguajnë gjithë këto industri të cilat janë këtu prapa meje. Çmimi që po e paguan qytetari i thjeshtë i Afrikës së Jugut për t'i pas këto industri këtu është shumë i madh. Ajri i ndotur, çmimi tepër i lartë i rrymës, gati dyfishuar prej para se me pas termoelektron e re, dhe mungesa e ujit për qytetarë të thjeshtë. Të gjitha këto çështje që kanë të bëjnë me ndotjen e ambientit u diskutua në konferencën e kombeve të bashkuara për ndryshime klimatike të mbajtur në dhjetor 2011 në Durban të Afrikës së Jugut. Në këtë konferencë, Nezir Sinani loboi edhe në për solla, por edhe në për rrugë me protesta.
Unfortunately, the next country where the World Bank is putting money in coal is Kosovo.
Që edhe Kosova të bëhet pjesë e agjendës botërore për ndryshime klimatike.
Po, konferenca o këbës të pozgjatë 2 javë, unë i marrë 1 javë para se me fillu kjo konferenca dhe i marrë me ftesën e shoqërisë civile të Afrikës së Jugut. Po, shtunën në kom protesta kryesore njerëzve të Afrikës, e afrikanëve domethënë, po edhe krejt grupeve të shoqërisë civile dhe aktivistëve ndryshëm që protestojnë kundër ngrohjes globale. Edhe unë ku marrë pjesë, me qenë se edhe unë përfaqësoj një grup shoqërisë civile e cila kundërshton ashpër investimin në projekte që kontribojnë ngrohje globale. Protesta nuk u shkon as kundër ushtrisë Serbisë apo ndaj grupi që ka ushtruar dhunë Kosovës, çfarë ka ndodhur domethënë para 10 viteve apo dhe më shumë, po ka qenë për një qëllim shumë përbajtësor dhe shumë të madh që krejt këtyne delegatëve që janë prej 193 vende të botës këtu, me u bë me dije që njerëzit jashtë këtyne mureve, jashtë kësaj ndërtese ku po flitet me orë tona, nuk po arrihet në asnjë qëndrim të mirë, janë të mendu për ndryshime klimatike, janë të i vujt ato ndryshime që janë ka ndodhin edhe po dojnë që me pas ndryshime të mira, që njëherë për gjithmonë mu orientu në investimet, projekteve që janë pastërta dhe që kanë mi kontribu një mjedisje dhe një planeti ma të shëndetshëm për këtë neve. Kështu që Po ka një pendjenja më të mira që kom pas gjatë qëndrimit tem këtu në Durban me dalë në rrugë edhe me nejtë 3 orë në rrugë të protestuar, të kërku për këtyne delegatëve që me fillu me izbatu këto qëllime për të mirën e planetit tonë. Durbani morë për 2 arsye. Para është se 193 shtetet e OKB-s që në ledhë për me debatu për ndryshimet klimaterike, edhe une jëmë të përfasu shoqërinë civile të Kosovës në këto debate dhe dialogje që në ka mohën këtu. Normal, arsyeja kryesore pse më ka shty me ardhe dhe deri në Durban është se këta aktorët që janë të involvuar në Kosovë në sektorin energjetik janë të lobu për projekte ndryshme këtu në Durban që me realizu. Për shembull, kemi Bankën Botërore që është të lobu këtu për një fond shumë të majmë për energji të gjelbërt, edhe unë e marrë për mjau që thot populli për mja përplas për ftyre projektin e Kosovës, më thonë që në Kosovë po investonin projekte peqymyrit edhe nuk pi konsideroni hiç projektet e pastra atje, kurse këtu një ardhë dhe po lyp një pare për me investu në projekte gjelbërta. Kështu që një farforme marrë me lobu kundër Bankës Botërore që me fitu këtë fond, me se nësa ta thjesht nuk e meritojnë se në Kosovë nuk janë fokusu në 6 vitet e kalume që sa kanë hapë zyrën e tyne më marrë me projektet energjisë, asë njëherë nuk janë fokusu në ato se çfarë projekte pastra këshin mujtë me zhvillu në Kosovë. Që kjo është arsyeja kryesore pse jam këtu, jam të taku me shumë delegacione për vendet ndryshme, me përfaqësues shtete ndryshme që janë të marrë në ngjarje ndryshme këtu, po edhe me përfaqësues shoqërisë civile prej vendet ndryshme të botës që janë të angazhuar në projekte ngjashme. E para këtu qeveria e Kosovës nuk është kërkon, meqense si duke mos qenë antare e OKB-s nuk ka mujt as me u përfaqësu këtu në konventën e OKB-s për ndryshime klimaterike, kështu që një prej aktorëve kryesor nuk e kemi këtu për me ballafaqu me këtë problem, po i kemi 2 aktorë tjerë shumë të fortë, është Banka Botërore dhe qeveria amerikane që janë përkrasit e fortë të projekti, edhe unë jam kom prezent shumë takime tyne, edhe gjithmonë e kom hapë për debat temën e investimit në energjinë në Kosovë. Normal që hiç mirë nuk e kam prit, sa ta e norme lobu për këtë diçka tjetër, edhe kur t'ja qelish këtë muhabet tash që dikon tjetër në botë janë të investu në projekte ndotna, siç është projekti i Qymyrit në Kosovë, atëherë normal që pak po nervozohem, për ndroj qerën e ftyrës, po fundja të të mu ballafaqu me atë aspekt se në Kosovë në ardhë dhe po dojnë me dhonë paret me investu në Qymyr dhe do të mu ballafaqu. Që unë shpresoj që mas tyne takimeve ata ka me marrë ma seriozisht punën e Kosovës edhe ma seriozisht punën e investime në projektet energjisë gjelbërt edhe në Kosovë. Po tash, konferenca i ka 2 anë, është pjesa zyrtare e takimeve, që është pjesa ma e mërzitshme e takimeve, se këtë shtetet krejt botës, në fakt ullën edhe flasin të nditën edhe në fond nuk mund kur gjë mu pajtu për kur gjë rreth ndryshimeve klimatike. Pjesa tjetër që është pak ma interesant është e pjesa e ngjarje vanësore që pequajnë këtu, ku vendet e ndryshme, qeveritë e vendeve ndryshme, po edhe shoqëria civile prej anën botës organizojnë ngjarje dhe debate shumë të flakta në tema ndryshme. Besoj që veç të e hap temën e Kosovës edhe investimin e Bankës Botërore në projekte ndotuna, ja kemi arrit që me përfaqësu Kosovën edhe në këtë konvent ndërkombëtar edhe pse shteti jonë kësaj radhe nuk ka mujt me konë këtu. Në atë kohën në Kosovë njëm që qeveria apo edhe vetë Banka Botërore thonë që ky projekti, masi veç është në dorë Bankës Botërore, ka me qenë projekt që ka mu bazun standardet më të mira të mundshme që zbatohen kudo në botë. Njëjtat sene ja u kanë thonë edhe këtyne në Afrikë jugut, mirë po tash veç kur termocentrali ka përfundu gati ndërtu me këto, është shumë një studim që ka bo vetë Banka Botërore, paneli për inspektim i Bankës Botërore, i cili i ka gjetë me 10 mangësit Bankës Botërore në zbatimin e këtij projekti. Këto mangësi ka në bojnë kryesisht me dëmtimin e mjedisit, me dëmtimin e shëndetit njerëzve që jetojnë atë rrethinës dhe mungesën e përfitimit vetë komunitetit që jeton rrethinën ku është ndërtu termocentrali. Pa marrë parasysh ka thot Banka Botërore, po edhe qeveritë e vendeve që përfitojnë për Bankës Botërore, që ata kanë zbatu standardet më të mira, në realitet ajo nuk ka dalë tjetë e vërtet kështu që na du të me pritë që të njëjtat sene mundet me u përsërit dhe kanë me u përsërit në Kosovë, kështu që na ka vonë shumë hapësirë për me mendu edhe me zhvillu aktivitetet reja dëmonë që shkojnë në drejtim shtymjes apo të forcimit Bankës Botërore për mi zbatu këto standarde në realitet e jovesh me thonë që kanë mi bëhe kur në fakt nuk kanë mi zbatu.
Këtë çështje që u ngritë në këtë intervistë me Nezir Sinanin, jam munduar t'i adresoj edhe në një kërkesë për intervistë që i kam bërë përfaqësuesit të Bankës Botërore, kur është prodhuar filmi dokumentar Mbretëria e Qymyrit. Ata nuk kanë pranuar të flasin për kamerë, por kanë dërguar këtë reagim me shkrim.
Kosova ka për qëllim që ta mbyll një termoelektran që është 40 vjet e vjetër, që është burimi më i ndotur në gjithë Evropën juglindore. Në vend të saj, duhet të pastrohet edhe një termoelektran tjetër e vjetër dhe të ndërtohet një elektran shumë më efikase. Qeveria e Kosovës ka kërkuar nga banka botërore që të jetë garantues për investitorët e sektorit privat në gjenerimin e rrymës. Ende nuk kemi marrë vendim në bankë lidhur me atë se a do ta japim këtë garancion. Për të qenë konsistent me rregullat e bankës botërore që kërkojnë balancim të brengave për ndryshime klimatike me nevojat për zhvillim, një panel i pavarur i ekspertëve të jashtëm është caktuar që të vlerësojë se apo i përmbush projekti Kosovës së Re kriteret e bankës botërore.
Zhvillo biznesin tënd, shfrytëzo ofertën më të mirë në treg. Kredi për bizneset të vogla dhe bujqësi deri në 100.000 euro. 0% shpenzime administrative. Procedurë thjesht aplikimi, me aprovim brenda 24 orëve. Banka Raiffeisen. Jeto më mirë.
Dan Cayman, eksperti kryesor i Bankës Botërore për Energji të Ripërtrishme dhe për Eficiencë të Energjisë, e kishte vizitu Kosovën në nëntor, një javë pasi që e kishte lëshuar këtë post në Bankën Botërore. Tash, si udhëheqës i laboratorit për energji të ripërtrishme në Universitetin e Kalifornisë, ai e dha këtë intervistë për jetën në Kosovë në kohën që ishte këtu.
Mr. Dan Cayman, you came to Kosovo because the head of the parliament, Mr. Jakub Krasniqi, sent you an invitation. Why? What do you do?
Well, actually, I was sent an invitation last year when I was serving at the World Bank as the chief technical specialist for renewable energy and energy efficiency. And it was not possible to come at that time, but I was this time already in Western Europe, and so it seemed like a logical time to come and take a look.
What do you do? What did the Speaker of the Parliament wanted you to look into Kosovo? Why did he invite you?
I was invited to take a look at the energy options here.
And what institution do you represent right now?
I'm a professor at the University of California at Berkeley, and I run an energy analysis laboratory there.
What sort of work does your laboratory do?
We work on a wide range of projects. We do large grid-scale efforts to look at the range of resources. We look at the integration of coal and gas and renewables and hydro and nuclear in large systems. We look at Western North America, including Canada and Mexico. We look at similar large grid systems in China and in East Africa, where an East African power pool is forming among 20 nations. And we also look at systems at that level, but my laboratory also looks at individual technologies, at gas turbines, at solar, wind, biomass technologies, ocean energy systems. So we do both the systems analysis, the modeling of the overall grid, and then we look at individual technologies, almost always renewable energy and energy efficiency, but there's often times when we look at hybrid systems where they're integrated together, fossil and also renewable systems in the same package.
So I guess you're invited to Kosovo because you're considered a key expert in the United States on clean energy source. Do you think Kosovo has potential for clean energy?
There's certainly potential here. The question is, of course, what scale, what would it take to deploy it, and what are the costs among all the technologies, fossil and renewable and efficiency. And so what my lab tends to do is to look at what mixes either make sense in terms of economic or environmental or social issues, job creation, for example, and then what are the requirements to integrate them together. I've been to many places where the renewable energy potential was great, but it would take a very large investment in the grid. And so small distributed systems ended up being the preferred option. And so it really varies not only based on the renewable resources, but on the infrastructure to integrate them together.
When we've asked the Kosovo institutions in this program of whether they would consider clean energy, alternative energy, they've said that it's just too expensive and Kosovo is too poor to be able to afford alternative energy. Basically that alternative energy makes no economic sense. Is this a myth?
I don't know if it's a myth or not because my laboratory is still looking at the numbers. It is true that there is very low-cost coal available because the coal mine is so close to the power plants. It also happens to be a coal, however, that produces a great deal of ash, It is not the highest energy content coal. And so I don't know yet what is the economics. And so that statement you said may be correct. It might be that the renewable energy options are simply too expensive, but it also might be that they're not. And so we are looking at those various mixes. And it's not necessarily only a feature of what is affordable domestically. There's lots of efforts globally right now to find places to deploy and scale up energy efficiency, increased use of natural gas, use of renewables. And one of the issues that takes place in every country, rich or poor, is what amount of local funding versus international financing is available for any given project.
You were invited to come into Kosovo actually a year ago to just look into this issue in order to research whether there are potential, but it took you a year to actually make it here. Why?
There's a number of reasons. One is that I started this new position at the World Bank in October of 2010, and I'm actually the inaugural, for the first one, to hold this title of the Chief Technical Specialist for Renewables and Energy Efficiency. And there's a huge number of projects around the world taking place. So I had a prior commitment to a whole series of projects in East Africa. There is a series of projects in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, in South Africa, in Central America.
And you realize that in Kosovo, the World Bank is the strongest supporter, even more so than our government, of a new coal power plant to be built in Kosovo. Is it possible that they simply didn't allow you to come to Kosovo when the Speaker of Parliament asked you to come here?
Well, I received, in my first few weeks at the World Bank, a huge number of invitations. It was very exciting for a whole number of places, some that have more fossil fuel, some that have more renewables in the mix. And so in working out that schedule, we had to schedule them in, and there were some projects that required specific skills that I could do, and others that required teams, and so we literally worked to schedule in as much as possible. And as my family will say, I was on the road nonstop. So we did a huge amount of travel to try to get those relationships built. It took till this point to get here, but it's also, as you noted, it's a place where the World Bank already has a team working on a number of projects already.
Precisely why I'm asking, because this audience knows in Kosovo for the last 10 years we had tons of experts from the World Bank that have been sent from all over the world working for the World Bank, but who have all been coal experts. In the end of the day, I want to know, were you sent on behalf of the World Bank, or did you come to your own initiative here?
No, I came on my own.
Because they didn't approve your visit here?
No, my schedule was packed. I worked on a range of projects and tried to get as many of them launched where we had the technical capacity to really assist on them. So some of them were very tight timetables. There was efforts in East Africa in particular where there was a series of investment decisions that required a great deal of time, but it was only one of many places. And so we put together a schedule, worked it out as an organization. While I was internal to the World Bank, we worked through that scheduling, that agenda.
So is the World Bank happy that you're here now?
You'd have to ask the World Bank.
And are you still working for them?
No, I'm now a professor at the University of California. I worked in this position to launch this office, this new Chief Technical Specialist, and like many academics, our time away from campus is measured in one-year blocks and sabbaticals.
But you just, you said this is such a new department, clean energy department from the World Bank, and you're leaving after a year. Why are you leaving so soon?
Because as an academic, my schedule of time away from the university is measured in one-year blocks. And I served exactly that year, from October 2010 to October 2011. And then I returned to the University of California, where in fact my laboratory had worked the entire time I was away at the bank. So I generally flew home to California every Thursday night so that my lab team could meet on Fridays, working on a range of projects. And we were looking at not only grid projects.
Are you impressed with the World Bank's commitment to clean energy? I'm asking you from a perspective of a citizen of a country where we cannot get this conversation even to open and discuss about alternative energy.
So I'm actually very impressed with what the World Bank has done overall. Individual country by country is a different story. But over the last 6 years, the World Bank has dramatically changed its investment portfolio. In the late 90s, early part of this past decade, the bank's portfolio started to change. And over the past 5 years, the bank has dramatically changed its portfolio so that now more than half of its total investment is in grid, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and policy and capacity building loans. So it's been a huge change.
I'm impressed as well about their commitment to this in the world and even in the region, even in our neighborly countries around Kosovo. They have lots of projects on alternative energy, but not in Kosovo. Why not?
Well, I actually can't speak to that because I am generally looking at projects when there's a mix of resources available in terms of the grid and investment possibilities. And so the portfolio projects that I put together was based on where we saw capacity to do things and where my office could be of a very quick assistance.
But was your office ever asked to provide assistance in basically seeing the possibilities in Kosovo of alternative energy sources, especially since this is our biggest problem. Electricity shortage is our biggest problem since the end of the war.
Right. So I was actually. In the fall of 2011, my office began to do a number of regional modeling assessments. Kosovo was one of the sites, but so was Central America and East Africa and Indonesia. And that effort is one that I worked on in collaboration with my colleagues within the bank.
And what research are you doing right now regarding alternative energy sources in Kosovo?
So right now we are gathering the data on the range of energy options, which includes the resource base, but also the economic potential for a whole range of energy sources, renewables and fossil fuels.
Can we know who's engaging you to actually look at the alternative sources? I understand that our Speaker of the Parliament has asked you to come in, but is it the World Bank engaging you to look at these alternative energy sources or someone else?
Once I left the World Bank and went back to being a professor, the projects that I select are the ones that my university team works on. And at this point, I'm working on this out of my interest as an academic. And it's largely because the types of projects I look at are ones where I think there's a really important opportunity to look at energy mixes that are sustainable. And sustainable in some places means environmental. In other places it means because the system is robust against outages or problems. In other places it means because there are opportunities for job creation. And so Kosovo is a really important place for reasons you mentioned. It's a country that is very reliant on thermal power right now and obviously has one very old and one medium-age fossil plant, the Kosovo A, the old plant, and Kosovo B, the middle-aged facility. But it's also a place where there's other actions going on. Right now, the German-based aid organization KfW is investing and is actually helping to construct a transmission line that would link Albania and Kosovo. And whenever I see efforts that are international linking in projects, it often opens up new doors that weren't available even a couple years ago. And so one thing I've seen in a number of places, in Central America in particular, is that energy plans that were being developed one country at a time. In one case, there was an effort that was very focused on natural gas only because that's what they could access. Another one wanted to go to geothermal. When they had the ability to link through a transmission line, it changed what each country was able to do.
What have you seen in Kosovo so far? I know you haven't been here for a long time, but what have you seen in terms of potential and places you visit on alternative energy?
So I physically, so far, only looked at microhydro sites, which are very interesting here because there's a really interesting network of them. And the number of sites that are functioning now versus those that could be brought into the system, depending on the right level of investment, is really quite large. So there's a very interesting microhydro resource. I spent part of, actually, my recent trip visiting one of those sites.
You were in Radav's source of our biggest river, Drini Bog. What did you see there?
That was a very impressive facility. It's well managed. It's a very efficient microhydro facility. I haven't examined all of the data yet in terms of production levels, but we talked to a very high-quality engineering team. They had just done a major retrofit and overhaul of the facility. And we also saw The other feature which I find very interesting, and that is...
You were in West Kosova. Tell me, you were in West Kosova, surrounded by also mountains there where you were in the source of Drini Bar. What did you see potential for wind power plant there?
I don't know yet. Typically, to do assessments for wind data, you need several months to up to a year of actual data collected. But in the most informal kind of visual assessment, the passes in the mountains that I saw, the sort of sculpted valleys that lead down, those are often very good sites for wind, and those are often places where that you then go in and do studies and find there's a real possibility. In fact, the geometry and the geography of the site I was in looks very much like the best wind site in California.
Looks like...
It's very informative.
Excellent. But you came at a time when it's one of our coldest times of the year. You haven't seen much of our sun. Nevertheless, from what you know, where we stand, do you think we have solar potential, considering that we are quite south in terms of European standards?
Right. Well, we certainly have solar potential. We've seen in countries like Germany that are considerably farther north that the potential is quite large. The balance, though, isn't just the resource. The reason why Germany's been able to install so much solar, of course, is they have a very generous feed-in tariff. That means there's a public subsidy to launch that industry. And it's worked out exceedingly well for Germany in terms of not only deployment of solar, but also job creation.
So tell me about this. You're saying job creation. How many jobs, can you be concrete? Give me numbers. How many jobs can we expect a coal power plant to create, and how many jobs can we expect alternative clean energy industry to create?
Right. So there's many ways to do the math on that. And one of the things that my laboratory does is assess those job impacts. There's two aspects that are critical to distinguish. One is, how many jobs do you get when a power plant, whether it's a solar panel or a run-of-the-river hydro or a coal plant, is running? Other part of it is, what does it take to do the manufacturing? What does it take to run a coal mine? And we do the full assessment of all those categories. When we look at operating a coal plant, building it and operating it, and compare that to natural gas, renewables, and wind, we get a very strong benefit by looking more at efficiency and renewables. In fact, solar is generally the industry that produces the most jobs if you also manufacture the solar panels. And that's a question that countries have looked at individually. Spain made a conscious choice not to manufacture all the parts, so the job benefit numbers are lower than they would be if they were making everything. They buy some parts from Germany.
Nevertheless, do we have some data as to, compared per megawatt hour of production of electricity, how much would we get employment on coal and how much on clean energy?
So we do have those numbers. If we take natural gas as the baseline, that's often used in international comparisons, there's a little less jobs in coal than natural gas. And there's several times more jobs, about 3 times as many jobs in efficiency, about 3 times as many jobs in wind than in coal or natural gas, and about 5 times as many jobs in solar. But Kosovo also mines its own coal. So there's an entire other employment sector based around coal. And so to do the assessment without looking at the fact that Kosovo doesn't buy its coal, it mines its coal, and then employs a significant number of people, all those need to be factored together. And that's really the job of the government officials and the civil society here, to assess what mixture those. But we provide the numbers based on the international experience.
How much has the price of clean energy gone down in the last years? Do you have an estimation?
Well, it depends which technology we're speaking of. The
solar?
Solar.
Something on solar?
So in each of the last 5 years, the solar industry has grown by about half every year, so 50% growth per year. That's a remarkable rate. No other technology has achieved that.
In poor countries, not only in rich countries?
That's the global production of solar panels.
Okay.
And the deployment has varied. China, that 10 years ago had no solar industry, has become the world leader in producing solar panels and in exporting them. China has become the world leader in installing and the industry around wind.
How much has that brought down the price of solar panels globally?
So solar panels have dropped in the last 4 years by about a factor of 2. So annual production has gone up by 50%. No, by about a factor of 2. So 100%.
100%.
So they've come down. They've come down by about half the price than it was 4 or 5 years ago. That still means, however, that solar in the international market is more expensive than natural gas or coal. But many countries that are deploying are also focusing on mechanisms to subsidize initially. And the most common of those policies is a feed-in tariff.
Yes, but what about including? Again, I'm talking about Kosovo circumstances. The price of land and people moving from that place, the price of cancer in lungs, the price of basically health and environmental effects.
So what you're speaking towards is what we generally call the externalities. And every technology has a range of different features. Coal is often cited as having some of the largest amount of externalities because of the health effects.
Environmental damage?
Environmental damage because of issues on water, on people's health, and agricultural impacts. Hydro, large hydro, is also one that's often cited as having a lot of impact. On the solar side, however, there are plans in place for very large solar facilities in Canada, in Spain, in the United States, in Morocco. And some of those very large solar facilities also have a large footprint on the land. And so there's a variety of different impacts. But in general, the externalities are larger for the fossil fuels than they are for the renewables.
Is the World Bank involved in basically setting up that grid line coming from Albania to Kosovo in order for us to get the alternative energy from Albania?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that the financing is largely through a German entity and through the European Union. I don't know who else is engaged in that.
Do you find it? Do you find it? Do you think it's a good solution to have that line for the future of Kosovo's energy?
From my perspective, that line looks like it is very beneficial on a number of levels. One is that it allows trading internationally, which generally is a benefit to both countries. And it also looks like a beneficial situation because while the wind resource is reasonably good in western Kosovo, the wind resource gets better still in some of the mountains in eastern Albania. And so opening up a transmission corridor may facilitate more renewable energy. It also, of course, may facilitate more gas use because the access to gas through Albania is a possibility. There's a variety of things that might be, that a given line might use. But from my assessment, that looks like a very beneficial line to have.
Talking to you, it seems to me we have a variety of choices as Kosovo citizens to choose from in terms of which way we want to go to supply energy, which we are lacking today. But how come that when we actually talk to the main international donors here, such as the World Bank, we get a very single-mindedness that we have coal, we are the third largest powerhouse of coal and dirty lignite, and we've got to burn it fast before we enter the EU, because we've got to make that money fast, otherwise we won't be able to. Why is this logic being imposed on us? Can you bring us some insight from basically international scene looking at Kosovo? Why do we get faced with that logic?
Well, that's actually why I'm here, to assess not only the resource potential, because what you've described to some degree is the amount of potential sun or hydro or wind, but of course deployment is a function of not only the resource base, but also the economics. And we are still working on that. The bank, the European Climate Foundation, a number of groups are looking at the economics, and so it's a function of both features, total resource and the economics. And that is an equation where with a large domestic supply of coal and having coal that's physically close to the coal mouth as well, it is an advantageous position in terms of the basic economic cost. Before the externalities that you mentioned.
In the conference where you were and you presented the possibility of alternative energy, there was talk of alternative energy, clean energy being a potential for possible 30,000 new jobs in Kosovo. Do you think that's an overestimation?
I don't know yet. We haven't done the assessment. It depends on the level of investment. It also depends on what jobs might be lost if one ramps down coal at the same time. So that's not something that we know the answer to yet. I've heard numbers that range in that area, but it really depends on the cost and deployment. I don't know myself yet what are the likely scenarios.
I've looked at, as far as when we're talking about scenarios, I have gotten hold of a draft. It's not a final basically analysis, but a draft of what is called preliminary Kosovo energy scenarios, looking at different potential from hydro, solar, wind, biomass. Would you confirm for me that there is a possible potential of about 800 megawatts that can be produced from clean energy in Kosovo?
Yeah, I can't confirm any numbers yet because we're not done with our analysis.
But would you deny them?
Well, I mean, I guess the standard television answer is I can neither confirm nor deny because we haven't finished our analysis yet.
Is that an overestimation?
I don't know.
When would you be able to come out with the final, basically the final draft of the current analysis you are doing?
Well, analysis that I do at the university is a continuation of work that was started when I was within the World Bank, and I would provide that analysis to the team there. I am hoping in the coming weeks we would have enough data both on the resources and on the economics, but it's very much a function of the conversations that we have with groups across Europe, groups in Kosovo who are looking at the numbers. And it's not just actually on the thermal, the coal side and the renewable side, but in many ways the resource, when I first look at Kosovo, that jumps out at me above all others is energy efficiency. That's one that has the potential to make any of these choices better. So it's what we tend to call a no regrets option.
So you're saying that if we only apply energy efficiency, which means isolating our homes better and putting better light bulbs, we'd be able to save an incredible amount from what you've seen?
Be able to save a large amount. The standards for insulating homes they're not codified yet. So there are some homes that are relatively well insulated, others that are less so.
How come the World Bank doesn't have a project about isolating homes, but just wants to build us another coal power plant next to my house?
Well, I would actually suspect that's probably not what will come out of a World Bank assessment, because in the projects I've been involved in the past year, the bank has been very aware and has been very integrative of efficiency measures and new generation.
For 10 years there have been consultants on this matter. None have opened an isolation of home projects. The European Commission has done some alternative energy projects, but not the World Bank. Is it a policy to just, on Kosovo, to treat Kosovo just a coal mine rather than anything else?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that because I've seen projects in Eastern Europe, in Africa, in Asia, where there's been a real focus on efficiency. And actually the efficiency team at the World Bank is really very, very impressive. They are at the level of some of the absolute best university teams I've seen in terms of being aware of the latest economics and technology and integration. And so one thing I think is very clear is that any project here is likely to be an opportunity to do not only home insulation, but also
so
the second
why
part
can't
of
we
the
get
story.
these impressive people, Mr. Kamen, be involved in Kosovo? Why can't we have them here?
Well, I believe that the team within the bank actually draws on all of the efficiency staff. I have seen them working on a number of levels.
No, you came here when you left the World Bank, clearly. Why can't we have more of your team to come here and look at these options?
Well, the World Bank's team has been engaged in efficiency in Eastern Europe for quite a while, and I've seen standards that have been worked on in one country adapted and applied in others. So I don't think that there has been a case where a large-scale energy project has taken place without also looking at efficiency. In fact, that's part of what the bank's internal teams tend to look at, because efficiency is almost always the least cost way to provide services.
Have you, in a time when you've been in the World Bank, two important letters have been leaked in the public, that the World Bank is under pressure to do a coal project only. Have you heard of such pressures while being in the bank?
I've not heard of such pressures.
But have you seen these letters in the public where the World Bank is pushed to push through the coal project?
I haven't seen letters where the bank was pushed. It is clear here that there's a huge need for additional power resources. It's also clear that Kosovo A is a very old, inefficient, and polluting facility. And even if one looks at the local environmental effects only, it's clearly a facility that everyone I've spoken with would like to see retired. People in Kosovo
Retired,
and
yes, but replaced with another coal plant?
Well, I think that's really a function of the analysis. And different groups are going to look at a different range of options.
Okay, how come, if we're talking now if scenario, the last question, if the 800 megawatts scenario is true, comes out to be true, that there is this potential, what should happen then?
Well, I think that, again, this is a huge if. I have not seen numbers nailed down on resources and economics, so I really can't evaluate without seeing that full story. But it's not just a question of how much resources. It's a question of how do you tie it together in a grid system. There's other investments that need to be made than just the generation side. Efficiency should be front and center in that story. The information I've seen so far is that the grid system here has a high amount of losses in it, and that is often a place where you get the most savings early on.
And do you think basically a private investor will come in as a god and resolve this issue of the grid? We're losing so much electricity in the grid. Can we expect a private investor to resolve this? Is this your experience in the world?
Well, I've certainly seen it in other places. It depends on, obviously, the conditions. Normally, private sector investors pick the places where they think they'll get the highest return, and that it's the role of...
Here, the people are basically stealing electricity, or companies are, and at the end of the day, nobody goes to jail, the rule of law doesn't work. How is a private investor going to resolve that for us?
Well, what we've seen already here is that there have been some private investors that have come in the microhydro area. And in fact, what's interesting about these cases is that in the situation where the tariffs they would receive were clear, then you saw the investments come in. And that's actually a global story. We've seen private sector investing in the energy sector very strongly linked to places where the financial and the regulatory environment permitted those kinds of efforts.
Tell me, final question is really final about Malaysia. What's your experience in Malaysia? Can we learn anything from that experience you have there in Kosovo?
So I actually think that many countries can learn from what happened in Malaysia. And it's a very exciting story. What happened is that one province of Malaysia, not on the peninsula of Malaysia, but on Borneo, had a choice between a fossil plant, a coal plant that would have been built. It would be the first coal plant in Malaysia, and a range of alternatives. And actually a civil society group looked at the options. They asked my laboratory to help them look at those options. And a package of opportunities was put together that involved microhydro. It involved a great deal of biomass, because one of Malaysia's other issues is that they're growing a huge amount of palm oil, which unfortunately is very destructive for rainforests. It's a real challenge on the habitat side. But the waste from that was seen as a resource. There is geothermal available. And so a package was put together that made sense. And it was a package, in their case, that was not all renewables. There's a fair amount of natural gas being used to back up the renewables. But that story made sense to the local
ministers. And did they invest a lot? Basically, did they spend a lot, much more than they would spend in taking the coal out?
Well, they haven't started the investment process yet, so we don't know how much they will actually spend. But the assessments that came out of my laboratory and then a team at the university in Kota Kinabalu, the provincial capital, was that the renewable story would be more expensive, but Sabah is also a very heavily visited tourist site. And their assessment was the added benefits by being able to highlight this as a green location for ecotourism was enough to tip
what
in
did
that
the government do in Malaysia after they got your report?
So what the government of Malaysia did was they looked at our assessment. They met with us again, looked at the analysis, and assessed not only the resources, but what was the ability and the willingness of civil society to work with them. So not just be in opposition, but work with the government to find ways to build sustainable solutions. And that package
did they give up building the power plant or not, the coal power plant?
They chose not to build the coal plant. They chose to build more natural gas capacity and to upgrade the grid, make it more efficient, and to build microhydro.
Are you saying that they actually listened to civil society in the end, and your results for just dropping a plan they had before that?
Well, they listened to a number of voices, but certainly we were one of them in the process. And actually, the key enabler in the Malaysia case was that there was a coalition of non-governmental groups that made the commitment to government to say, if you can see the broader set of solutions that we're proposing, that we will work with you on them. And that partnership was really, I think, the biggest story in Malaysia.
Well, we hope, in order to get clean air, that we will get the same result in Kosovo, and we can continue our life in a much better air than we live today in Kosovo. Mr. Dan Kamen, thanks a lot for being on Life in Kosovo.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much.